Unmute us. We are unmuted. Let me try and start everything else up correctly this time. That's not what I want to be on. There we go. Get rid of that. And I don't know if this works, but where is it? This one. It does not. Okay. All right. Hello, SSL. My name is Rich. I'm pretty new, but pretty new to the SSL, that is. Um, but maybe you've seen me around doing some podcast stuff. I'm doing another one. And this time I am joined by Metafiction.
Hello,
Uh,
everyone. Thank you so much for having me.
yes, and I'm guessing, a lot of anybody who might listen to this probably will recognize your voice, be my guess. I don't know. Um,
More likely than not, they're probably secretly sick of it by this point.
um, you are, I guess I don't know how many others there are, but you do commentary for the SSL. Are there other people that do that? Or is it just you?
Uh, well, to be honest, there used to be a lot more, but we have kind of lost quite a few. Before me, the main person I believe was a user by the name of Project Saint, who was with the league for a lot of seasons. A lot of people will be familiar with his work. Also, Sock, who recently stepped away a few seasons ago. Um, I do a lot of commentary, but I would be remiss if I didn't point out the talents of Valpix, who is most commonly heard on the Cup knockout games and does an excellent job with those. But as far as I know, it is just us two at the moment. So I'm always sort of advocating anybody who wants to by all means give it a shot because it really is a lot of fun.
Nice. Yeah, it's I got more questions related to that coming up, but so I don't want to jump into that just yet. But it's an interesting aspect to the league that I so far really like. I've only just listened to a little bit because, like I said, I'm very new. I'm only an academy player at this point. Um, so I haven't actually watched too many of the streams or of the sims, I guess. Um, so I also wanted to add that your player Jude Greer, um, and that's actually between those two things. I guess the fact that you do the commentary and that's your player. I don't really know a whole lot else about you as far as what you do in the league. So is there any other uh, things about you that I should know or that anybody listening should know in terms of like introduction?
Well, well, like you said, I do commentary and I do have a player. I also am actually one of the assistant managers of Tokyo SC Cairo City.
Okay.
Annie Hamlet is the manager, and I also work with Jess, and they are both amazing. Shout out to them for giving me the chance to work in management. But yeah, that is the bulk of what I do. I also hang out on Discord and make bad jokes a lot of the time. So that is I think my main contribution to the league apart from commentary.
Perfect. Yeah. So I'm a little bit familiar with Enham. Uh, Not like a lot, but from SHL, and Jess, of course, quite familiar with over from SHL as well. So um, that's awesome. That's awesome. I like that. Management over here. I guess I don't. Again, too new to have any interesting questions about management at this point. So um,
Fair enough.
don't know if we'll touch on that too much. But the thing I'm the most interested in is the commentary portion of what you do. I guess I again, all this is coming from a place of a person that's very new to the league, but I don't really understand how the simming takes place. So I was wondering if you could kind of maybe break down that process a little bit in terms of how the simulation gets to you, and then like how you um, how you do your thing.
Certainly. So, and I know that there are probably members of the sim team. Again, shout outs. Everyone on the sim team is amazing and do so much work to they're the reason these sims even make it to YouTube in the first place. I need to say, like, without their work, none of this would be possible. Essentially, what happens is the world of the SSL as we know it exists in the form of a football manager save file. And the idea is that the simmers take these files, they run the game through like you would normally be playing football manager. I don't know how familiar you are with the game as a whole, but essentially the idea is that they simulate it based on just the CPU playing against one another. Like, there's no personal intervention apart from, you know, the managers will send in halftime substitutions occasionally, where if they have too many players on their team, they'll occasionally rotate in players. But apart from that, the games just play out like from beginning to end without intervention. And what they do is they make sure that goes off correctly. They record that they record that video, and then they will put that on a Google Drive that we have. That's where I show up and yell at it for a while, as you probably want to do. And then once that's done, the way it works is I actually record my audio on a specific site that we found, Craig, I believe it's
Oh,
called. And I don't know if that's the, yeah,
I'm
I'm sure
familiar.
you're familiar with it.
Yeah, yeah.
So, but yeah, we use Craig for the commentary, and it's a and for those unfamiliar, it's a little tool that you can plug onto a Discord server, and you can tell it to record your Discord calls and such. And we use that. We call it all through Discord, which I still find is kind of wild, uh, but yeah, we will do that. And once we are finished with the commentary, we send the link to the person in charge of post production for that match, and usually that is either Candice or Jess. In the time that I've been doing commentary, and then they will prepare it for YouTube, which is a whole other discipline of arcane arts that I don't really know that much about. But from that point, it will be set for premiere, and then it goes live at the regularly scheduled time.
So what's the I guess what's the turnaround time on that? How much time do
Well,
you
it
get?
it kind of depends. Usually, what'll happen is there is a deadline uh, of I don't know the exact time. Usually, it kind of varies, but there's usually a very large amount of time, like 9 to 12 hours, I think, between when I get the file and when I need to get it to the post production team. And overall turnaround, a match day video will usually be go from the Simmers starting the file to being posted on YouTube within the span of probably in the neighborhood of 48 hours, maybe a little
Okay.
more. So it's a pretty quick turnaround. So like I say, and everyone involved is very, very working very hard to get this done, get everything in. Obviously, sometimes there are delays. There are
Sure.
real life stuff that comes up that sort of precludes us making one of those deadlines sometimes. And I will come clean here. There are times that I misread a deadline and just can't get to commentary, or I have to. This, I will be honest, like this, I believe it was match day one this season. I actually had to run home from work, which is about 15 minutes away, to record commentary for a for a video, and then rush back immediately just to make the deadline. But that is the exception rather than the rule. I will say, like we are usually very much on top of it. Point is, it's very difficult work. Everyone's putting in 110% to get this stuff the way it needs to be, the way that you guys see it.
So when you're given, I guess you're given like a video file then, I assume.
Yes.
Okay. Um, are you? I guess so. Yeah. So you can um, speed it up, slow it down. Whatever. Go back. Do all that kind of fun stuff, manipulating it. However you would need to. Um,
Not necessarily.
okay.
Usually, the way it works is that essentially we try to get to a point where all that the post production really has to do is make sure that the audio is synced.
Okay.
So what ends up usually happening is I'll commentate basically from start to finish all in one shot. This
Oh.
doesn't always happen
Okay.
on the first take because I'm kind of a perfectionist. So, but it's basically for ease of editing, just to make it a little easier to get the final product finished. And sometimes there will be minor tweaks that need to be made on the post production end, but I at least endeavor to try to minimize that as much as I can.
Okay. So you don't. Uh, do any scripting then? You just go.
I I will I will confess, I usually skip to the end to check the what the ultimate results are
Mhm.
before I go, just to get an idea of what happens in the match so I'm
Sure,
prepared
sure.
for it. But as far as the minute, like minute to minute details, it's all like first take, like or initial take. I'm 99% of the time I am reacting to it the same way that I would as if I was watching it for the first time because I am watching it for the first time.
Cool. Yeah, it adds a nice touch to the sim. That's yeah. This is yeah. It's really good. I really like it. On top of the sim itself being kind of a reasonably decent viewing experience.
FM does really well. Like people will give it flack for the 3D match engine being a little janky, but
Yeah, sure.
having
But
that visual having that visual representation really does add a little bit of extra authenticity to it, I think. And I try to amplify that as best I can by giving my honest reactions as best I can to a match because well, we'll probably get into this later, but it really is. I do try to. My goal is to try and make it as close to a quote unquote real experience as I can. That's my goal with every match that I do commentary for.
yeah, that's understandably a bit tricky given that you're working off of highlights and there's a little bit of yeah. It's not perfect, but
It's certainly a lot easier than having to commentate a full 90-minute
sure.
match. I could
Yeah.
not. I think I'm okay at doing this. I don't think I have the chops to pull off 90 minutes plus added time plus halftime just by myself. I am not at that level. I
Yeah,
will freely admit.
that's a lot for sure. Um,
That's a whole other skill set, I think.
yeah. Well, coming from SHL, where the sim engine, what you get for visual output is pretty bad. I Football Manager seems incredible to me, so I'm really enjoying it. What I've watched so far,
It's
which
kind of
hasn't been a lot, but
it's kind of ready made for this sort of thing.
yeah, yeah,
The game itself is largely about reacting to things that are outside your control. If you just take that away, it's no different from watching a real match, just in abbreviated and slightly sped up form.
yeah. Yeah. It's I think it's solid. I'm sure there are people that have complaints, but for me, it seems pretty good. Is there anything else with comics? I'm kind of out of questions that are specific to the commentary aspect of what you do. Was there anything else you
Well,
had that you wanted to?
I did want to say I do try now. Obviously, but what I'm about to say is probably going to paint me in. Well, maybe paint me as a little more ambitious than I really should be, but people have asked me what I draw my inspiration from when I like who I'm trying to model my commentary after. And whenever I get asked that, I sort of have two responses. One of them is a person by the name of Peter Drury, who is one of the greatest soccer commentators ever to exist. Uh, paints pictures with words about soccer matches, soccer players, anything to do with the game. He's been in the game for longer than a lot of us have been alive, and he's just a master of his craft. And that is something that I aspire to at least flirt with. I'll never be as good as Peter Drury. I have made my peace with that, but I want to try and evoke that sort of same ethos in what I do. And I remember one interview that he did that has stuck with me. It's that every match, like, he said, paraphrasing, of course, that every match, no matter how trivial it may seem, is somebody's first soccer match. So, for that reason, it's important to treat it with the respect it deserves, even if it's just two bottom feeder teams that are scrapping for a point, scrapping to potentially stay up at the end of the season. It still deserves to be called with all of the gravity of a Champions League final. And I found that inspiring, and I've tried to pattern my presentation off of that as best I can. Again, I don't always get there, but that's what I strive for, at the very least.
No, I love that. That's from somebody like me that I'm not unfamiliar with soccer, but I don't watch it. Like I played a little bit through high school, but that's largely the extent of my experience with it. Just a little played a little bit, and I'll watch World Cup or Olympics, and that's kind of it. Um,
Yeah.
so I come in from that I think that angle of being not brand new, but like yeah, I can appreciate the the effort to make it accessible.
Absolutely. And like I said, he's one of the best to ever do it and will probably be considered, when all's said and done, to be one of the best to ever do it. So it's a high bar I've set myself, but it's one I do my best to reach. So Peter Drury is one person that inspires me. The other one might be a little more familiar to some of you guys. Uh, it's Greg Woods from the Yellow's Marble Runs channel. Uh, Now, you might not be familiar, but Yellow's Marble Runs was really big during the pandemic. I think was around before that, but the idea is that it's these marbles doing like very basically a sort of a miniature Olympic sports like the high jump, relay races, that sort of thing. It's all it's frankly very silly, but it's enhanced by the fact that they've got somebody like Greg Woods, who is a legitimate commentator and gives real gravitas to it that makes it more than just somebody filming their marbles rolling around. There's storylines, there's real emotion to it. It feels way more important than it seems on paper. It's Greg Woods is a huge reason why so many people know about the Marble League, about Marble Olympics, whatever you want to call it. And kind of what he's doing, I sort of see myself as doing here. I'm I mean, obviously, again, I'm not on his skill level. He's a professional. I'm just some dude yelling at a laptop, but he has this capacity to take something that seems trivial, that seems like nobody would care, and makes people care about it. Like, he gives so much weight to his words. He tells these stories about what's happening, and that's what I'm trying to do as well. Like, ultimately, what we're seeing is just pixels on a screen. We're just simulating this idea of a sport on our screens. Like, it's not real, and ultimately it holds no real lasting consequence for our lives. And yet we can, at least for a little while, for at least an hour, 2 or 3 times a week, immerse ourselves in that. So that's also what I try to do, is I try to make it sort of goes back to what I was talking about earlier about trying to make it as quote unquote real as possible. And sort of that's why I do that, because it just adds to it, treating it with the respect it deserves, treating it with the pathos, with the emotion that I would calling an actual soccer match. I mean, not to diminish the SSL, of course, far
No,
from
no,
it.
no, of course not.
But that is sort of how I see it. That's sort of the lens I view it through. So yeah, those two are the two people, the two commentators that I try to model my style most after. And yeah, hopefully I get there. I Hopefully I get there one day.
I can't
So yeah, that is yeah.
I can't say one way or the other because I'm not familiar with either of them, but I will say that I thoroughly enjoyed the. Yesterday, I listened to oh boy, listened to and watched. Oh man, I don't remember which day it was. It wasn't the most recent, but I think it was like the I don't know. Yeah, I can't say for sure. One of the not the most recent, but I think the one prior to that for the major division match day. But yeah, it was
Yeah,
very enjoyable. So I think you're doing great.
I appreciate you saying that. Thank you.
So again, I guess last call. Do you have anything else you want to talk about commentary related?
Well, I did want to touch on my sort of experiences trying to it's sort of this league is more than just soccer, because I love soccer. I'm a huge soccer fan, but more than that, or at least as much as that, it's sort of a storytelling medium. Like, I tried to immerse myself in the what we're doing essentially, and what any sim league is doing, more than just simulating games to see who wins. we're sort of telling these sports stories. We're telling stories of players, of teams, of organizations, season to season, the highs, the lows. Eh, Sports is intrinsically linked with emotion for me. You have to really throw yourself in at the deep end, let yourself be swept away by it to really get the most out of it that you can. And this is no different as far as I'm concerned. The way that we can create these little personas, these imaginary men and women who run around as a bunch of pixels kicking a ball for 90 simulated minutes and still manage to craft all of these interesting little narratives, little stories around each other. One good example being this one kind of predates my time in the league, but there a lot of the older players users will know of the rivalry that existed between Budget Busquets and Franco Torres. And that is a huge example for me of some organic storytelling within the league. The ability to create these players that didn't exist before, but suddenly are in this blood feud, and being able to play into that, being able to spawn all of these, little elements, these little role play things from that. It just something about it just grabs me, and I think one of my favorite things is doing the career point tasks that we have, where you get to sort of expound a little bit on what your player does outside of the league during the off season, during training, what have you. It's those little bits that I get to really flesh out my character, give him a little bit more of a personality, make him a little bit more real. Probably the best way to put it.
Mhm.
It's sort of a creative exercise for me, a creative writing exercise, and I fancy myself a bit of a writer, and I say having not really written anything of consequence in years, but it really is a great outlet to sort of explore some of these stories, some of these little character moments in the framework of the sport that I love, in a community that I let's be honest, I'm kind of an outsider. This is the only sim league I've ever been part of, and
Okay.
a lot of people here are in the SHL or in the ISFL. We just had a bunch of people join from, or all of these other sim leagues that exist. But I this was my first sim league that I joined because I like soccer, and I'm consistently blown away with how welcoming this community has been. How I feel like I've known some of these people for years, even though we're only now coming up to 1 year for me in the league. So, anyway, all this to say, I think it's an excellent outlet, at least for me, for cre- creating sort of a character study, creating these storylines, these recurring elements that sort of all mesh together narratively to create something that really couldn't exist anywhere but the internet. So that for me is probably my favorite part of the SSL, is to the just be able to come up with all of this stuff as part of the community.
Yeah. So when I saw, you know, my little form asked people to fill out, I saw you had that in there, the writing slash storytelling outlet. Um, and I had a hunch, and I tell me if this is the case or not. Do you have a background in like tabletop games?
And funny you should mention that. I actually do. Play. I'm currently in three Dungeons and Dragons games
Oh boy.
concurrently.
Okay.
So yeah, I do play tabletop games. I've also always been a fan of in the video game realm of RPGs.
Mhm.
Anything with a strong story focus. Story and characters really have always been very important to me, and anything that smacks of that, anything that allows me to create this, well, create really, just no qualifier needed to create the way the SSL can. I eat it up. I just
Yeah.
do. I love it.
Yeah. No. Given my experience with sim leagues and kind of knowing there is a fair bit of crossover, I think, with people that are into tabletop or just broadly role playing. I saw that in there, and I was like, oh, I bet there's a, I bet there's some tabletop here, some tabletop going on with that. But yeah, no, I fully agree. The when I initially joined the SHL, that was kind of one of my intentions. Sort of, it was like a side benefit of like I am not a writer. I do not enjoy it. I don't think I'm good at it. But I made an effort early on to try to write quite a bit, just because I knew it was something I would like to try to improve on. I don't know that I really did, but it was something that it did attract me to it as well. And again, the idea of well, I guess the way I do it, I don't tend to write a whole lot of uh, like character or player narrative just on my own. I generally with a player, so I've had 3 players, or I'm on my 3rd player over in the SHL, and kind of my process is I've got like a set of bullet points in my head, roughly, that kind of basically define the player, and then I use the point tasks or anything that essentially is like compulsory writing, like I said, the weekly point tasks. I use that to kind of like fill in the gaps or expand on those things, which I do quite enjoy, because then it's a bit of a character building exercise, a little bit of a writing exercise, a little bit of like yeah, creative expression that I don't get in like anywhere else really. So
And like you say, it can also help fill in the gaps narratively. Like
mhm.
before I had my job as a commentator, before I was a manager, I also did these weekly articles that were just sort of narrating what Jude was getting up to, perhaps that week, what he thought about certain events that had transpired, what he thought about, the a few seasons back we did a big international tournament, the World Simulation Football Classic, which that's actually where I got my start as a commentator, by the way, was during that tournament.
Oh, cool.
Uh, but it was just useful to be able to have these little short vignettes about, well, I say short. Anybody who's listened to me commentate, anybody who's listening to this, heck, knows I am very wordy. I spout off at the mouth at the drop of a hat. But just these little vignettes that sort of got into his head, sort of explained what he was thinking, let him react to stuff, to digest stuff that was happening. That was genuinely enjoyable. I always looked forward to being able to do that. A lot of people probably see those as something of a chore or something that has to be done in order uh, to progress their player to get TPE, but I took it as an opportunity to really flex my muscles in a way that I haven't in a long time, and it really got my creative juices flowing. So I will always be happy to have been able to do that, and the SSL really helped me with that because I had not been writing for a long time before this. So I guess I'm just really glad for something to kick me into gear again.
Yeah, no, it's a really interesting. This whole kind of like sim league ecosystem is very, I don't know, it's very strange, but it's so, I don't know, for the people that really like it, it's so great. It's yeah. I don't know if did you go looking for it, or how did you find the SSL?
Well, to be honest, I actually found it on Reddit. It was actually Rashford, who I believe you are a little familiar with.
Yeah.
Um, Rashford posted a recruitment post on one of the Football Manager subreddits, and it got me curious. So I clicked the link and I found the forum, and I lurked for a while, kind of seeing what it was all about, and eventually I was just like, yeah, this seems like fun. So I, on a whim, I just signed up, and the rest is history, I suppose.
And I should mention really quick as well. If you need to leave or anything, if you got a time limit here, let me know. Otherwise, I'm just gonna kind of keep going until we hit a point where it's like, oh, there's not much left to say.
No worries. I will talk as long as you want me.
Well, I was gonna.
I don't know if that's a I don't know if that's a promise or a threat or what, but
Uh,
trust me, I'm good. As
oh, I
long as
love
you
it.
need to go, I'm good.
I love it. No, no, it's great. I was gonna say the So there is Reddit post. This is sort of how I stumbled into the SHL as well. It was not necessarily a Reddit post, but the same thing, just on a different different forum. Um, but yeah, it was when I kind of saw what it was. It was very much a moment of like, yeah, this is exactly what I want. I was always kind of a fan of those like be a pro mode and in sports games, that kind of thing. And then
Yeah,
combined with like also having a kind of a my relationship with tabletop at that point was a lot different than it is now. But that was an element of it too. That kind of like role playing aspect was certainly part of it. But there was also, I don't know if this was your experience or not. Um, when I first joined the SHL, being somebody who's been around the internet for quite a long time, I was extremely skeptical initially of like what the community was going to be like. And I was kind of ready to just be like, this is a throwaway thing. I'll create, find out that I'm not, particularly fond of the people around here, and then just kind of like, oh well, that was a nice little thing to try out, and moving on. Um, I guess what was your experience like with experiencing the Simile community for the first time?
I think I was kind of the same way in terms of, let's see where this goes. I don't know if this is going to be something that I really commit a lot of time to, but as it turned out, it was really, getting joined up, getting everything taken care of, like as far as getting my players situated and into the draft pool, so to speak. Honestly, I was really surprised with how welcoming it all was. Just jumping onto the Discord and immediately being surrounded by people who were also like Football Manager largely, but also were willing to help me figure stuff out as a complete newbie.
Yeah.
I do remember like one of the I kind of snuck like so the team that got drafted by Tokyo SC Cairo City. I I don't know if Enham and Jess know this or not, so they're gonna find out now. But after the fact, a couple seasons later, I did end up after I had become an assistant manager. I ended up out of curiosity scrolling back through the existing comments to around the time when I was being drafted, and something that stood out to me was that one of the reasons they were so interested in drafting me specifically was because I was a first gen, because this was my first
Hmm.
sim league, and that I think in itself speaks volumes about the kind of community this is. That people are willing to reach out to people who have zero experience with this sort of thing, sort of take them under their wing, take a chance on them, and I'm really glad that they did ultimately. I don't know. I think my time in the SSL, excuse me, uh, might have turned out very differently if it wasn't for people like that.
Yep.
So as I say, I'm really grateful for them being willing to chance their a very high draft pick on somebody who might turn out to just be a complete dud.
Now
So
they're the types that doesn't particularly surprise me. Just knowing, I again, I don't know Enham that well, but just like, um,
I
yeah, it doesn't
having
surprise me.
having talked with them after the fact, based on my experiences with them as an assistant manager, it doesn't surprise me anymore. But at the time, it really
Sure.
did.
Yep.
Yeah, I was expecting. I'd had some very productive chats with a lot of the managers who had reached out to scout me before that draft, and theirs was definitely one of the ones that I enjoyed most. Um, but even then, I was not expecting to be off the board at fourth overall for sure. I was expecting I'd probably drop into the second round. I figured since nobody knew who I was just some guy. I figured there was probably some quote unquote inner circle that I by default was not going to be part of because that happens so often in
Yeah.
online stuff. But
Yep.
no, it was like right from the jump, I felt like I was part of something, and that really got to me.
Yeah. No, it's something that I did a very 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 brief um stint in management over in the SHL. Let's see, 7 years ago, something like that. I don't remember when it was. very long time ago. And that was something that I always had as kind of like a so it was in the like junior league, so it's the stakes are a bit lower, so it's maybe a bit different if you're in like the upper the SHL versus the SMJHL. But our attitude or my attitude was always like rewarding first generation players with a high pick if you're able to, and it's like the kind of thing that can kind of spark a bit of extra interest in somebody, and I feel like there's a lot of value in that. Now, of course, it's a little bit different. And again, this is in SHL terms, but like when you're in the main league, it's risk reward is a little bit different, a little bit.
Certainly,
But for us
certainly.
in the juniors, that was something that I wanted to um, try to do.
And that's sort of what a minor developmental league is for, I
Right.
think, to build that interest among the people you just drafted, whether they be completely new or veteran in the sim leagues but new to the SSL, or an experienced user who's recreating. Like everyone just kind of melds together at that point, and it forms this camaraderie that you wouldn't get otherwise.
Yeah. No, it's that first that like initial contact. Again, I don't. I guess everything I have is framed in SHL terms, so it's have to bear with me a little bit.
No worries.
But yeah, that your first team, your junior team, is so impactful for so many people. Like that's everything. Like that's yeah. If you get, I mean, most of them are good, so it's not really an issue of like getting a having a bad first experience. But like, there's that potential exists, but it's so important to have that right feeling, the right vibe, the right people around you to get you interested. Because ultimately, it's like it's just they're like anything else that's like a role playing experience. It's social. It's the whole thing is social. It's not there's numbers and stats and stuff to do, but like ultimately it's a social experience.
Absolutely. Like you cannot your players can have as much talent your team can have as much talent as you can put together. Like you could assemble a team full of all of the superstars, but if they don't like being in the same locker room as one another, they don't like talking to one another, they have genuine beef with one another, it's just not going to work. Obviously, it doesn't really translate to the football manager side of things, but from a personal standpoint, that you can't sustain that. Maybe you'll get a good season or two out of it, but eventually somebody's gonna get sick of it and they're gonna want to do something different, and then you just can't do that. You have to be able to coexist
Yeah,
basically, and that is so important. And I'm really lucky that I was drafted by an organization that thinks that's important. Not to say that none of the other
yeah,
organizations think it's important. To be clear,
yeah, yeah,
pretty much everybody in the management circle is great, and they're doing a really great job with what they've got. But here especially, I'm really glad that it's the situation that it was when I got here. So
yeah. No, it's especially with it's a very different experience when you're on a second player or even a second league. Like it's like it's not the same. But as like a first generation sim league member, it's like yeah, that first experience can it's very 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 important.
absolutely.
I'm really glad to hear you had a good one. That's great. Although I'll knowing uh, maybe back when did you join? What season?
I joined about midway through season 11,
Okay.
which was so I spent the rest of that season in the academy, and then my first quote unquote proper season was season 12.
Is that like a year and a half ish, something like that?
About a year ago, I think.
About
I
a year.
joined at
Okay.
the end of October last year.
Okay. Okay. So I guess probably yeah. So at that yeah, I would say I think I could say fairly confidently that like the league, the community around this league would. I don't know what it was like in the early days. I don't really can't comment, but from what I know about who's in the league now, the people that I've seen around, I'm pretty confident to say the community here is a positive one at this point. So and at that point probably as well. So
I think so too, and it's remarkably drama free as well. I should say because
that's
I've heard horror stories.
yeah.
Let's leave it at that. But
Yeah,
I
it's
don't think there's been, at least while I've been here, there hasn't been any huge dramatic outbursts. Now, as soon as I say that, something's probably going to happen. So knock on wood. But no, it really is drama free, and I am really happy about that because life's too short to get mad about a video game.
yeah. I haven't been around sim leagues for as long as I have. It's yeah. I've heard plenty of interesting things. Although nothing that I recall about the SSL. But granted, it's a relatively young league. But well, we can talk about your player. I don't know if you've got. I had it up here, but I got bumped from the old portal. And now I've. That's right, Jude Greer. There we go. Let's see. Does it show? Am I? Oh yeah. Your left side of the pitch looks like playing up and down, kind of
Hmm.
all around there. I didn't actually. I meant to look at your build and kind of get an idea here, but it looks like we got a lot of speed, and then like very all around, which I guess makes sense if you're kind of available to play any position on the left. You got to have a pretty broad skill set, so that makes sense. What were did you have initial intentions with your player in terms of like what you wanted? And have those changed?
So my initial goal was to create somebody who could play either as a left back or as a left winger. My goal, I've said before that my goal is to sort of replicate the Gareth Bale arc, where he started out as a left back and eventually went further forward and became one of the best players at Real Madrid. Obviously, though, that hasn't quite happened in the way that I thought I would, but that's not a bad thing either. My entire career so far has been at left back, and while it's not as flashy as a winger or even a proper wing back that's a little further forward, I'm still finding that Jude is really massively contributing to his team, and that's all I really can ask for. Being able to play in chances to hit really strong crosses, occasionally even getting a goal. Crazy enough. Uh, but I mean, ultimately, as long as I'm contributing to the team, as long as we're winning matches and looking good doing it, I don't care where I play, as long as it's something I can play, and more to the point, as long as it's not well, as long as it's not boring defensive nonsense. I mean, I make no secret about the fact that I love attacking football. So as long as I'm able to get up the pitch and help my team however I can, that's all I really care about.
All right, let me see here. So you've got a handful of traits you've bought. Looks like. Um,
Yeah, I invested a lot of my money early on into traits and not so much TPE, but I think trait wise, I'm more or less happy with what I've got. So I think the next big investment is going to be getting a few extra TPE packages because I feel like I'm a little behind where I should be in TPE at this stage. So I'm going to try and hopefully close that gap a little bit.
okay, that was going to be kind of my next question: is where is your player at in terms of his career arc? Like how I guess the short version. How close are you to regression?
So this is season 5 for him, I believe. So I would say he's still in his ascent, sort of.
Okay.
We see usually regression starting at, I believe, 9 seasons is where it really start. 9 or 10 seasons is where it really starts kicking in. So I've got a few more seasons before we hit the downswing a bit. So I've still got a lot of time left on the clock, but eh, obviously I'm doing my best to get Jude to the top of the mountain to be one of the best players in the league, and hopefully I can get that far. I feel like he's on a really good path so far. He's over 1,500 already, which I think is pretty good. But I think there's still plenty of room for him to get even better. And ultimately, I just need to be smart with how I invest. And I think that's the main thing. As long as I don't dump it all into, say, long throws or something useless. Not to denigrate long throws, but it's not really, you know what I mean.
Yeah,
Just
yeah,
the
yeah.
idea
Yeah.
that as long as I'm smart about it, as long as I don't waste points where they could be used better somewhere else.
Sure.
Assuming I haven't done that already, of course.
I I would have no idea. I'm completely ignorant when it comes to football, man. Not completely, but like mostly, let's say. So I yeah, no idea. um, let's see. So you're let's see, Holly or no Tokyo. Why did I think Hollywood? Tokyo. Um, where is Tokyo at in terms of like where you guys expect to be in? I guess how competitive is Tokyo right now?
So we're in kind of an odd spot right now. We just had a lot of our older players really, really start. We're going through what I like to call an ongoing semi rebuild. We're constantly trying. We're still trying to compete where we can in the cup, in trying to get you know, trying to stay at the top half of the league for the moment. I think we did have a really good couple of drafts this last couple of classes, certainly. So I think in a few seasons, once those players continue to grow, once we can start introducing them from Cairo into the Tokyo side, I think we'll ultimately be in a very good position. But right now, it is a little awkward with some of our players being having already hit regression and some really feeling that regression. But at the same time, I'm not pessimistic about our chances. I think we could hang with pretty much any team in the league, and I think we've shown that these last couple of seasons. We don't always turn up, but when we do, I think on our day we could beat pretty much any team, or at least make a real game out of it. Uh, So I know that's kind of a non-answer, but I think we're kind of. I wouldn't necessarily call us contenders because you have teams that are so obviously a step above everybody else. But I think overall, we have a lot about us. And sometimes the thing about Tokyo is that we always seem to punch a little bit above our weight
Hmm.
our, in terms of TPE. Like you compare TPE, it might be a bit of a gulf in class, but in the actual matches, we always have a tendency to really come out swinging in matches where we're probably not the favorites and end up getting a draw or even a win against people's expectations. So I think keeping that in mind, overall, I'd say we're in a pretty decent place. Obviously, we could always be better, but I'm overall I'm optimistic long term. I think obviously I'm not going to make any predictions because inevitably somebody's going to be recording this and is going to meme the heck out of me if we collapse. But I think we will eventually, hopefully, be one of the contenders. I think we have a really good chance of being one of those good, really good teams in the fairly near future, at least.
What kind of role do you fill in the management team? Are you tactics? Are you like asset management, drafting? Like, what's your how do you fit in?
Uh, Well, I kind of do a little bit of everything, to be honest. I did make the tactics, and again, Enham, Jess, I'm sorry, but uh, yeah, I'm a little in. I'll be honest, I'm not always 100% confident in the tactics I put out there. I always second guess myself as far as whether I'm actually as smart at about this game as I think I am. But then we get a really good result, and then that inflates my ego for a while, and the cycle continues. But apart from that, I do also involve myself really heavily in the scouting. Like
Okay.
I try and get a good idea of the draft picks together. I try to figure out what our situation is in terms of free agents, that sort of thing. So I try to chip in on the roster side of things as much as I do the tactical, but ultimately I defer to both Enham and Jess on these decisions because they have the tenure, they're more experienced in management than I am. And obviously, they also have insights that I don't have on a lot of players just because they've been in sim leagues longer. They know a lot of these players and they know a lot of the people behind the players. So yeah, I guess that's the best way to put it. Is I kind of kind of a jack of all trades is the best way to put it.
Cool. Yeah, no, it's totally fair. So I'm getting to the point where I'm running out of stuff to talk about, and also I'm getting pretty hungry. So,
You know what? That's fair.
oh, you got some final thoughts? Anything you want to finish up on? Anything we haven't touched on you wanted to maybe talk about?
I think we've kind of covered everything I was prepared to talk about. I did want to say again, thank you for having me. This is, I don't really get a lot of chances to talk in depth about this league,
Hmm.
so I just wanted to take and say thank you for giving me the platform to talk about how much I obsess, hyperfixate, and generally geek out about the SSL.
No, yeah, no.
And again, I want to give a shout out to N Hamlet and Jess for taking a chance on me in season 12, for promoting me to the management team. Shout out to everybody in Tokyo and Cairo who's listening. You guys are genuinely awesome. And Candace, of course, for all the work he puts in to keep this league running day to day, because it is a lot. And a lot of it people are probably never really going to see. So honestly, mad respect. Dude is really pouring his heart and soul into it, and I respect that.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's when I talk to him, it seems pretty clear when you just kind of look around the league, like his fingerprints are everywhere. But yeah, I want to thank you as well for talking with me. I know that, like you said, it's tricky to find opportunities to talk about this stuff because it's weird and not, it's you don't get these kind of opportunities just in normal day to day to talk about this weird hobby that we have. Um,
I mean, you could talk
yeah.
about it to people, but they wouldn't really understand it. They
I,
think you're crazy.
Yeah, I'm not shy about talking about this kind of stuff with people I work with. It doesn't, I don't get anything out of it. Like they know I do some weird hockey thing. But but yeah, no, that's why I like the podcasting thing. Is it's great to be able to talk about this stuff with the other people that are so passionate about it, and it's yeah, love it. So yeah, thank
Absolutely.
you so much. And again, like this was almost a day off for me of just I just kind of put a nickel in you and let you go, and so I very much appreciate that. Not that
I did I did warn you at the top that I
yeah,
would be I spout off at the mouth. It's what I do. Everyone everyone knows this. But no, genuinely, I'm again really grateful for the opportunity to talk about some of this stuff and really dig into it, because I think there is a genuine discussion to be had about the value of sim leagues like this uh, as a storytelling outlet, as a creative canvas for people in a very non-traditional way.
yeah, totally agree. All right. So anybody who listened to this, thanks for doing so. Anybody, I see Sloth and I saw North, who I believe is in my draft class, if that's the person I believe it to be. Thank you for popping in, saying hello. Uh, I yeah, so long, I guess.